I built that ship and died trying to save people." These were the terrifying words that came from Jamie's mouth, a boy of only 5 years old, while watching a documentary about the Titanic. His eyes filled with tears, his hands trembled, and he continued, "I am Thomas Andrews. I made the perfect ship, but I couldn't save everyone." Jamie's mother, completely in shock, watched her little son panic upon seeing the images of the shipwreck. How could such a young child have such an intense emotional reaction about something that happened over 100 years ago? What you're about to discover is one of the most disturbing cases of reincarnation ever documented. A true story that was investigated by the TV show Ghost Inside My Child and left parapsychology experts without explanations. Thomas Andrews was the brilliant designer of the RMS Titanic, a man who died at 39 years old trying to save lives during the shipwreck in 1912. More than a century later, an American boy began manifesting impossible memories. Memories of a life that wasn't his, of a tragedy he could never have lived through. From a very young age, Jamie demonstrated an inexplicable obsession with the Titanic. It wasn't normal childhood curiosity. It was something much deeper and more disturbing. He would cry when he saw images of the ship, talked about technical details impossible for his age and even more frightening. He referred to the Titanic as "my ship" and talked about the passengers as if he knew them personally. "I couldn't put enough lifeboats," he would say, crying with a guilt that no child should carry. But it was during a visit to the Maritime Museum that Jamie's mother had the most astonishing experience of her life. The 5-year-old boy looked at a model of the Titanic and began pointing to specific details with precision that left the museum staff in shock. Here was the engine room. There were the main boilers. "And these stairs led to the first-class cabins," said Jamie, as if he were giving a naval engineering lecture. His mother was paralyzed. A 5-year-old child had no way of knowing this technical information, unless he had really lived inside that ship. The most disturbing part was when Jamie began describing Thomas Andrews' final moments. With tears in his eyes, he recounted, "I was in the smoking lounge, checking the ship's plans one last time. The ship was sinking, and I knew there weren't enough boats for everyone. I stayed to help people, women and children first." The details were exact. Historical witnesses actually reported that Thomas Andrews was last seen in the Titanic's smoking lounge, studying the construction plans while the ship was sinking. How could Jamie know this? The family decided to investigate more deeply. They discovered that Thomas Andrews was born on February 7, 1873, in Northern Ireland. He was the chief designer of the Harland and Wolff shipyard, responsible for the Titanic's design. He died at 39 years old during the shipwreck on April 15, 1912. But what haunted them most was discovering that Jamie was born exactly on Thomas Andrews' death anniversary, April 15th, 100 years later. Coincidence? What happened in the following weeks would make even the most skeptical question this possibility. The family's investigation took an even more disturbing turn when they decided to test Jamie in a way that no 5-year-old child could pass. They placed dozens of old photographs in front of him, mixing images of the Titanic with other ships of the era. Without hesitation, Jamie immediately pointed to the correct photos. "That's my ship. This is the command bridge where I worked, and here is where my office was." But when they showed a photo of Thomas Andrews, something extraordinary happened. Jamie fell silent for long seconds, his eyes filled with tears, and he whispered, "That's me." I was thinner back then. The most chilling moment came during a session with a child psychologist specialized in paranormal cases. Jamie was placed in a state of deep relaxation and began speaking with Thomas Andrews' Irish accent. His voice changed completely. "My name is Thomas Andrews, Jr. I was born in Comber, County Down, Northern Ireland. My father was also called Thomas, and my mother was Eliza Peary." The psychologist checked each piece of information afterward. All were correct. Jamie had never studied the Andrews family. had never heard of the small town of Comber, much less about Thomas's parents. Where did this information come from? But the definitive test was yet to come. The family gained access to the original Titanic plans, technical drawings kept in the White Star Line archives, documents that not even specialized historians had easy access to. When they showed the blueprints to Jamie, he immediately began pointing to modifications he had made during construction. Here, I changed the hull thickness. This wall I reinforced, and here I added more supports. Modern naval engineers confirmed all the modifications mentioned by Jamie really existed in the final plans. Something impossible was happening before everyone's eyes. The most shocking revelation came when Jamie began drawing. Without any model or reference, he took pencil and paper and drew with surgical precision the internal layout of the Titanic. Every corridor, every staircase, every cabin was in the exact place. But these weren't children's drawings. They were detailed architectural plans that seemed to have come from an experienced naval engineer's drafting table. The engine room was here, the boiler furnaces here, and this secret passage led directly to the emergency deck, Jamie explained while drawing, as if he were revisiting his own home. The most disturbing thing happened when he drew something no history book mentioned: a secret room on the Titanic that Thomas Andrews had designed as his personal refuge. I would stay here when I needed to think alone. No one else knew about this room, said Jamie, drawing a small compartment connected to his office. The parents were skeptical until a consulted naval historian confirmed. Recently discovered records in the Harland and Wolff archives actually mentioned a private workspace of Thomas Andrews that was never publicly documented. The child had revealed a secret kept for over a century, but it was during a virtual simulation of the shipwreck that Jamie had his most intense emotional breakdown. Upon seeing the computerized recreation of the Titanic's final moments, he went into total panic. "No, I need to go back. There are still people in there," he screamed desperately, trying to enter the computer screen. "I promised Mrs. Widener I would save her son. I promised." His mother hugged him, trying to calm him, but Jamie continued sobbing. "I couldn't save everyone. It was my fault. I built the ship, but I didn't make enough boats." Thomas Andrews' century-old guilt seemed to be consuming an innocent child's soul. The situation became even more bizarre when Jamie began reciting names of Titanic passengers as if they were old friends. Colonel Gracie was a very educated man. Mrs. Brown, the one they call Molly, was too brave. And Captain Smith, poor man, he trusted the ship so much. He spoke about these people with an emotional intimacy impossible for a child. But when he mentioned the victims, something devastating happened. Little Lorraine Allison. She was only 2 years old. "I couldn't save her," he would say, crying compulsively, as if reliving the tragedy. The most astonishing thing was when Jamie revealed private conversations that would have happened between Thomas Andrews and other crew members in the final hours of the shipwreck. "Captain Smith asked me how much time we had. I said, 'An hour, maybe an hour and a half at most.' He fell silent and then thanked me for my honesty." Naval historians were perplexed. This specific conversation between Andrews and Smith was only mentioned in an obscure survivor's testimony, buried in the archives of the 1912 British Inquiry, a document that was never published in popular books or documentaries. How could an American child know this intimate dialogue? Reincarnation specialists from the University of Virginia were called to investigate the case. Dr. Jim Tucker, successor to the famous Dr. Ian Stevenson, was impressed by the amount of verifiable details that Jamie presented. "In 40 years studying reincarnation cases, I've rarely seen a child with so many specific and emotionally charged memories," declared Tucker. They subjected Jamie to rigorous tests of memory, personality, and even neurological analyses. All results pointed to something scientifically inexplicable. That child really seemed to carry Thomas Andrews' memories and emotional traumas. During therapeutic sessions, Jamie began manifesting technical knowledge about naval construction that left engineers perplexed. He explained in detail how the Titanic's watertight compartment system worked. The ship could survive if 4 compartments filled with water, but the iceberg tore 5, so there was no salvation. A 5-year-old child was describing engineering principles that naval engineers take years to learn. I miscalculated the steel's resistance in the low temperatures of the North Atlantic. If I had known, I would have used different steel, he said with a deep sadness that broke hearts. The most inexplicable phenomenon happened when they took Jamie to visit the Titanic wreckage through virtual reality. Upon diving virtually into the sunken ship, he navigated the submerged corridors as if he knew every inch. My cabin was this way. The smoking lounge was in this direction. He guided the virtual explorers with absolute precision, until reaching what remained of the lounge where Thomas Andrews was last seen. There, Jamie had a devastating panic attack. I was sitting right here, looking at the clock. It was 2:05 a.m. I knew I only had a few minutes. His descriptions coincided exactly with historical accounts of the last witnesses who saw Andrews alive. But it was when a team of documentarians decided to confront Jamie with contradictory evidence that the case took a surreal turn. They showed him an altered photo of the Titanic with purposely wrong details. Jamie immediately identified every error. This is wrong. The funnels didn't have that inclination. The lifeboats weren't in that position. And this hull color is completely off the White Star Line standard. His reaction was almost aggressive, as if they were insulting his masterpiece. The team was speechless. How could a child have this level of technical knowledge and this emotional attachment to details that not even specialists noticed immediately? The investigation reached its most dramatic point when psychologists discovered that Jamie had extremely specific phobias that made no sense for a child. He would go into total panic upon hearing ship sirens, refuse to bathe in bathtubs because it reminded him of compartments filling with water, and had recurring nightmares with ice-cold water. "Mommy, I dreamed again that I was sinking in the cold, dark sea, and there were people screaming for help, but I couldn't swim to them," he would report through tears. These psychological traumas had no explanation in Jamie's life, but made perfect sense if they were residual memories of Thomas Andrews. The case gained an even more mysterious dimension when they discovered that Jamie had inexplicable artistic abilities. Without ever having technical drawing lessons, he created perfect architectural plans of ships that never existed, but followed exactly the design patterns of Andrews's era. This ship would be safer than the Titanic. "Look, I put more lifeboats here and made the watertight compartments higher," he explained while drawing projects that modern engineers considered technically viable and innovative. It was as if Thomas Andrews was using Jamie's body to complete projects that death had interrupted. Paranormal specialists made an astonishing discovery when analyzing Jamie's drawings. Many of the improvements he suggested to make ships safer were exactly the modifications that were implemented in naval construction after the Titanic disaster. Regulations about lifeboat quantities, watertight compartment heights, emergency communication systems, everything was in the child's drawings. It's as if he had learned from his own mistake and now wanted to correct what went wrong over a century ago, commented one of the researchers. During a regression hypnosis session, something extraordinary happened that would forever change the perception about reincarnation. Jamie, in deep trance, began speaking in ancient Irish Gaelic, a dialect that not even modern linguists completely master. "Ta me anseo fos, nil me marb." "I'm still here. I'm not dead," he murmured with the characteristic accent of County Down. The most shocking part, linguistic analyses confirmed he was using expressions and pronunciations specific to Thomas Andrews' home region in the early 20th century. An American child speaking an Irish dialect that practically disappeared decades ago. The family received a call that left them breathless. A direct descendant of Thomas Andrews, living in Ireland, had watched the documentary about Jamie and wanted to meet him personally. My great-grandfather was Thomas's cousin. Our family keeps letters and personal objects of his that were never made public," explained the Irishman. During the virtual meeting, he showed intimate photographs of the Andrews family. Jamie's reaction was devastating. "Uncle William! It's Uncle William!" he shouted emotionally, recognizing a man in the old photos. "He taught me to fish in the Comer River when I was little." The descendant was shocked. Those photographs had never been published, and William Andrews was indeed Thomas's uncle. The final revelation came when the Irishman showed an object that never left the family: Thomas Andrews' personal pocket watch, found among his belongings after the tragedy. When Jamie saw the watch, he had an immediate physical reaction. His hands shook uncontrollably, he began sweating coldly and entered a spontaneous trance state. It was 2:05. I was looking at it. I knew I only had a few minutes. I thought about my wife, Helen, and my daughter, Elizabeth. He recounted Andrew's final moments with emotional precision that made everyone present cry. The exact time coincided with historical estimates of when Andrews was last seen alive. The connection between past and present had never been so visceral and real. The discovery that would shake all scientific theories happened when researchers decided to do a behavioral DNA test. Jamie was placed in situations identical to those Thomas Andrews faced at work: naval engineering problems, design decisions, structural calculations. His approach to solving each problem was identical to Andrews' documented methods in his personal diaries. He thought exactly like Thomas thought, used the same mental processes, reached the same technical conclusions. "I always start by calculating the hull weight, then the distribution of the boilers. That's how my brain works," Jamie explained, perfectly replicating Andrews' work methodology documented in Harland and Wolff archives. During a visit to the place where the Titanic was built, in Belfast, Jamie had the most intense experience of all. Upon stepping on the Centennial shipyard, he entered an altered state of consciousness and began walking directly to specific locations. "Here was my workshop. There was the drawing table where I designed the ship, and at this exact point I saw the Titanic completely assembled for the first time," he said while guiding the family through places that no longer existed for decades. Local tour guides were perplexed. Jamie was describing the exact configuration of the 1912 shipyard, based on architectural plans that only specialized historians knew. The most emotional moment was when Jamie spontaneously went to Thomas Andrews Memorial in Belfast. Upon seeing the statue, he showed no surprise or curiosity as a normal child would. Instead, he remained respectfully silent, like someone visiting their own grave. After long minutes, he whispered, "Helen and Elizabeth. I miss them so much." These were the names of Thomas Andrews' wife and daughter. Without any external stimulus, Jamie had access to Andrews' most intimate emotional memories: the love for his family that he left behind on that fateful April night in 1912. Tears streamed down the child's face as he murmured, "I need to go home. I need to tell them that I love them." Jamie's case gained worldwide notoriety when he appeared on the show The Ghost Inside My Child on the Biography Channel, where children with supposed past life memories are interviewed. During filming, Jamie impressed the production team by correcting historical errors in the script and providing details about the Titanic that not even the show's own researchers knew. "We've never seen a child with so much verifiable information about a past life," commented the executive producer. Today, at 12 years old, Jamie still carries Thomas Andrews' memories, but in a more balanced way. Therapists specialized in reincarnation cases helped him process the emotional traumas of his past life. He continues drawing ships, but now with the natural joy of a child, no longer with the weight of century-old guilt. "I understand now that it wasn't my fault. I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at the time," says Jamie, demonstrating impressive emotional maturity for his current age. The family decided to create a foundation in memory of Thomas Andrews, focused on maritime safety and Titanic education. Jamie actively participates, sharing his unique memories with historians and naval engineers. His contributions have already resulted in new theories about the shipwreck and improvements in modern naval safety protocols. Maybe that's why I came back, to help make the seas safer, reflects Jamie with wisdom beyond his years. The case was documented by Dr. Jim Tucker from the University of Virginia, a world specialist in child reincarnation, and published in scientific paranormality journals. Besides appearing on The Ghost Inside My Child, the case was also featured in Discovery Channel and National Geographic documentaries. Skeptics continue seeking conventional explanations, but no hypothesis has been able to adequately explain the massive amount of technical, emotional, and specific historical information that Jamie has demonstrated since he was 2 years old. Regardless of your beliefs about life after death, Jamie's case makes us question the limits of human consciousness and the possibility that certain memories transcend physical death. Thomas Andrews may have found peace through Jamie, and perhaps has completed his mission, ensuring that tragedies like the Titanic never happen again due to human negligence. Sources: TV program, The Ghost Inside My Child, Biography Channel, Dr. Jim Tucker, University of Virginia, Harland and Wolff Archives, Family Testimonies, Specialized Psychological Documentation. More details and complete references you'll find in the video description. This was another extraordinary case that challenges our understanding about the continuity of consciousness. What do you think about this story? Do you believe that Jamie really is the reincarnation of Thomas Andrews, or is there some conventional scientific explanation? Share your reflections in the comments and come join our group Circle of Lives, a space dedicated to respectful discussions about reincarnation, spirituality, and mysteries of human consciousness. Feel free to interact and share your own experiences, always remembering that our group prioritizes constructive and respectful dialogue among all participants.